Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Giselle Tadros, pediatric physical therapist and oral motor specialist. I am super excited today because we have a great conversation. So let me get them joined here. 1 second.
Hi.
Hi. We did it.
Hooray.
Hello, lovely ladies. How are you guys?
Good. Just doing the juggle as everyone is.
Right. I just gave a quick introduction who I am. So, Lauren, why don't you go ahead, tell your friend who you are, where you work, what you do, and then
Sure.
Kelsey, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So my name is Lauren Ruffridge. I know Giselle from a prior work job at the Jersey City Medical Center. We worked together years ago, but now I live in the Syracuse, New York area. I focus on feeding and the home health care. And I do really like the little ones all the way up to teenagers, but I'm doing mostly feeding and orofacial myofunctional therapy.
Awesome.
And I'm Kelsey. I'm a pediatric OT in Philadelphia, and I have connected with these lovely ladies on Instagram, and I feel so lucky. I grew up in central New York, not far from Syracuse, so Lauren and I have that in common, and I followed Giselle for a long time as an inspiration, so that's been really fun to make this connection. And yeah, I focus on infants and toddlers, mostly on feeding and lactation support, and I've really found a niche in the TOTS space. So,
And where do you work now?
I do home health. So I do in-home visits, and I have some groups in different play spaces and whatnot around the city. So it's been fun.
In Manhattan or?
Oh, in Philadelphia.
Oh, in Philly. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's so nice to be able to connect finally. Like you said, we kind of know each other online, but it's nice to actually be able to have a conversation together.
Yeah.
So definitely this CDC milestones guidelines, the new ones, is something that us therapists can all find common ground to talk about. But Lauren, I'm going to kind of let you start because you were actually the one that approached us and said, hey, we need to talk about this. And I think so go ahead.
Yeah, so I found that hearing from someone from each discipline might be helpful. So that's why I'm so glad you guys were willing to join in, because there's a lot of questions circulating, like what do these mean? How can they impact us? So just to kind of summarize, for those of you who aren't familiar, early February, the CDC and the AAP released a new set of guidelines for developmental milestones. The previous guidelines were based on what 50% of children at that age were doing, which is about average. Whereas now these new milestones are based on what 75% of children at that age can do. And so their intentions here are good in that they felt like when they were at 50%, some parents would say, well, my kid is doing, or my kid isn't doing it, but neither are 50% of kids at this age. So let me just wait and see. Or maybe they would bring it up to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician might say the same thing. Well, 50% of kids are doing it, but 50% are not. So maybe let's just wait till the next appointment. So their intentions behind adjusting this to the 75% mark are good, but what we've found as therapists are that there are kind of several flaws in them. And the first one is that they didn't include any physical therapists, occupational therapists, or speech language pathologists, as far as we can tell, in updating these milestones. And I think that's what really shows through when you look through these milestones and you look at comparisons of what some people are showing, like what the old milestones are, or what resources like PT, OT, and speech use to base eligibility for services and delays on. They're very different. So that's one main thing that's come up. Why wasn't a PT, OT, or speech pathologist included on that? Another thing is that in the previous guidelines, they adjusted the ages. So like for some of them at 9 months, they would say this skill should be happening on the old ones, but now they're listing that at 12 months. So they've kind of adjusted it so that it's unclear. There's 3 months difference now compared to what they were saying in the old lists. So that's one thing that's come up a lot. Another one is that they've kind of totally eliminated some of these milestones. One of the big ones that comes up for me is the crawling one, which we can talk about in a little bit. They totally took that one off, which is a huge milestone for many reasons. Babbling isn't even mentioned on there from the speech perspective is huge. There's a lot of vagueness over all of them, especially with like the feeding stuff that they just barely touch on, but like they have ranges of like as your child gets older, but don't really say when and don't give a lot of specifics. So there are concerns with that. And then the biggest concern is, of course, how is this going to impact our children in terms of like getting them the services that they need? And also, how are the insurance companies going to respond to these new milestones? And is that going to impact reimbursement rates? So those are kind of the main things that have come up that I've been reading and hearing. So that's kind of a summary.
Yeah.
I don't know where we want to dive in first, but like Kelsey, do you want to, or either of you, if you want to just touch on any of those or add to it?
Yeah, I think kind of what it comes down to is that it's created a lot of confusion for parents. And there's already this kind of stigma behind getting help and having an issue that you need to have therapy for. And I think that's starting to change, but we're not quite there yet. I never think it's a bad idea to have more people like checking in on your child or checking in on yourself. Like more people help. Especially when you have some trained eyes to kind of be like, oh, that looks a little wonky, or like, I haven't seen this. Do they do that other places? And in a pediatrician appointment, right, for a well visit, it's pretty quick. It's mostly parent report. And if parents don't know the right questions to ask in response to the pediatrician, it leaves a lot to the imagination, and it leaves out a lot. So I think the pushing back of, something that was at 9 months to 12 months leaves a lot of wiggle room. And these are like crucial parts of infant development and how we're building the groundwork for our children through their lifespan. And 3 months doesn't seem like that long, but in infanthood, in that first year of life, it's a long time. So,
Right. I think it's important for parents and for other therapists to know and understand that like the norms for normal human development haven't changed. There's no evidence or new evidence that's come up to really say, hey, what we had was wrong and we have to change it to this. So for us as therapists, I think like that's sort of our biggest like question mark. Like, why are you changing this if the standardized tests haven't changed and like nothing we know about what normal human development has changed? So what's this change about? And I think that they said that they want to eliminate like the wait and see. So hopefully that means if you go to your doctor with this and they fall outside of the norm, the doctor is going to say, all right, let's get you help. Not like, let's see how things go until your next appointment. And there's definitely an onus on the pediatricians here to really like step up and take charge. For me, I've always found in terms of motor development, so much happens from like 7 to 9 months. And kids go, I mean, you can attest to this too, Lauren. Kids go to the doctor at 6 months and they don't go back until 9 months. And there's such a window of opportunity there. A, so many things are happening. And B, we can get in there and quickly change these little motor patterns, whatever it is that like it's so much easier to create those motor patterns on a clean, fresh slate than try to undo and unplug bad habits and create new ones, especially children that are 8, 9, 10 months. Their personalities start to develop. They start to understand how to get their way, have strong opinions. And so therapy, it actually becomes a lot more challenging for the therapist and for parents to be able to carry out these like tips and tricks. And so for us therapists, it's a no-brainer. I mean, therapy, there really shouldn't be a stigma attached to it. It's fun, it's play, it's like showing parents how to, allow this development to happen in a very natural, play-based way. And I guess not everybody knows that, or not everyone has experienced that.
Yeah.
Speak for physical therapy, we don't need a doctor's referral. So in most of the states here in the United States of America, you could see a physical therapist and not need a referral from a physician. So I think it's a little easier to have access to us. I'm not sure how it works. I don't know that that's the case in all of the states for all the other professions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
What,
in Pennsylvania, you need a script for PT. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Broke up a little bit. I was like, am I frozen? I don't know. But I think what it comes down to as well is like, we want to have this proactive approach, right? If we see a little something that we can tweak easily now, like Giselle was saying, why not take, a few visits with somebody who can tell you exactly what to do, how to make it fun, how to make it easy, and build it into your day-to-day routine, rather than waiting and then it becomes a bigger issue, because there's always a domino effect with development.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that, like through this parent support group that I've started, I find all these parents have all these questions, and just want to know how they can set their babies and children up for success. And just like you said, having this proactive approach, if we wait until they're like delayed, instead of getting in there when we have some question marks, like you said, we have less to undo and we can set them up for success. And the parents feel more empowered, so that they are the ones who are setting them up for success and knowing what to do. And I just find that and I know that there's inconsistencies with how many parents turn to the CDC as their source for milestones, but now that they have this app that you can use, like a lot of people are saying that they did download it and that they do look to it. So maybe that's not their main source, but if it is, if you Google it, it's one of the first things that come up. So, the concern is just that they'll look to that and they'll say, well, there's only a few things on here, so, it must be doing okay. And then if they go to their doctors, it's not for 3 more months, like then that's like 2 to 3 months lost. And then, it's a ripple effect. Then there's a delay with getting the evaluation done if you do get the referral for early intervention. And now there's so many wait lists because people, were not pursuing it during the lockdown, and now that they feel comfortable. So it's just like such a spiral effect that putting any more complications on this, it just makes it seem like a disservice to parents and even to pediatricians who may be referring to this. They're the experts in so many things, but they're not really the experts in the physical development or the feeding development or the speech development. They're the ones you go to for all the medical things. But I think the message that I want to say is like, let's give parents, let's point them towards the sources of, like, for us, it's ASHA, the American Speech and Hearing Association. They have milestones that are, what I go to when I look for parents asking me. I say, go to here. This is where you can refer to. I don't know if you guys have that with like your governing bodies, but that's kind of how I feel. Like, let's not point them to the CDC. Let's point them to the more specific research-backed, standardized, norm-referenced milestones that can really help us better gauge when to seek help. Like, that's really what this is all about. Not to put pressure on people or feel like, oh my gosh, my child isn't saying 50 words. Like, that's not really what this is about. This is more about knowing when to seek help early, because early is pivotal. Like, that's when we can make the most progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, pretty much with any issue, if you can start working with it as soon as you notice there's a difficulty, you're going to make progress so much faster than waiting and waiting and waiting and maybe being like, they're just going to develop compensation patterns. And that goes for speech, it goes for motor, it goes for feeding, goes across the board. And they slide by. And sometimes, I'll meet my kids' friends. They're 8 and 5 now, they're older, and a lot of their friends have these compensation patterns. And it's not a bad thing, right? As therapists, we notice all the tiny little things and you're constantly analyzing, and you don't need to do that, right? We as therapists nitpick our own children for sure.
Yeah.
But try not to. And it's just like, oh man, I wish I could have gotten in there earlier to be like, oh, work on this little thing, and it'll make like so many things easier.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be like weekly regimented exercises all the time. Like, if you get it early enough, it can be a really simple suggestions.
Yeah, short term. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Another point that I wanted to mention that I think has come up when I've been like reading about this is how this is going to impact school therapists and teachers, and how, like, you know, potentially missing these kids early on, the standards for schools haven't really been adjusted. They're just kind of being continuously raised, whereas now we're almost lowering the standards for these, like, you know, birth to 3, birth to 4, and what kind of impact is that going to have on the schools and, you know, the speech and physical and occupational therapists and teachers who are all trying to support these kids once they become school age. So I know that that's a huge question mark and a concern as well. So I don't work in the schools, but I talk to a lot of my colleagues who are in the schools, and, you know, they're overrun with their caseloads as it is in typical times. So, you know, it just begs the question of, like, what does this mean for them when they become kindergartners and are expected to start reading? And, you know, it's a lot of question marks, I guess.
Yeah, we're kind of, like you said, lowering the bar early and then expecting this like big burst to happen once they're in school. But also, our school systems are not really set up in a play-based learning environment to facilitate in most places.
Right.
And it's just kind of a double whammy of frustrating factors.
Right.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is to kind of take on another role as a parent, taking over that kind of like, okay, I will kind of be in charge of monitoring my child's development. And I'm not going to outsource that to the pediatrician. I'm not going to
Yeah.
outsource that to my grandparent. I'm not going to outsource that to like the neighbor who might have some teaching experience or something like that and be like,
Yeah.
oh, they're fine. Like, look into occupational therapy developmental checklists. A lot of the school programs have great PDFs that you can pull up really easily. And I'm sure same for PT, same for speech. Like, any little thing that you're curious about, you can look up pretty quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a pros and cons of Googling
Yeah.
and going
Blessing
down
and a
the rabbit
curse.
hole. Exactly.
Totally.
I
You
just
know,
want to say,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. You guys know I'm a big proponent of just like empowering parents to trust their gut. They are the expert on their baby. They know sort of better than any of us. Like, we have clinical opinions, but I always say that parents, you know, they just
Yeah.
know more. And so even when it comes to tongue ties, I mean, I just feel like this is the same thing that we've been dealing with in this other realm where, like, you know, we can't expect, like you said, the pediatricians to always be flagging stuff. So if a parent, sometimes I get a lot of referrals that a mom will even say, oh, my mom was saying that she noticed that my baby only always sleeps facing one side. So sometimes moms are very overwhelmed and don't notice, but grandmas notice. And so just to, like, you know, lean into your village and trust the people that are around. I had a really interesting comment when I posted that we were going to be talking about this, and someone said, did the CDC change the guidelines because of all the masks that we've been wearing?
Yeah,
And I
Great question.
interesting question, but you know, I wonder if all this pandemic stuff is going to have any kind of impact on children. I presume that it does. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's very interesting. But yeah, I think that everyone has been feeling so isolated, and like, we don't want that. We want you to know that you have a team. There's a lot of people out there that you can trust. We took a lot of classes and did a lot of school to give you, you know, we've seen it all. And, you know, you find an experienced therapist that can help you, and we break things down. That's our job. That's what we are trained to do, to help you get over these humps.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know if there's anything specific you guys wanted to mention. You know, we don't really have to get into specifics because I think that could take a long time. But if there were any you could. I know that for me, I was looking through some of the feeding ones were just super vague. Babbling wasn't mentioned, which is like a huge indicator early on. And I know that they took crawling off. There's a lot of them, but like, do you want to just
They
one of
took
you touch on
rolling
crawling? I
as
feel
well,
like that comes up
which,
a
you
lot for me,
know,
especially because my own. Sorry, my connection is fuzzy a little bit. Go ahead.
Same. Go ahead, Giselle.
no, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, crawling for me, my third son didn't crawl, and my pediatrician said, you know, he may just skip it and go to walking. And I know too much, not enough to like say exactly why, but I knew it was a red flag, and I know like crossing right, left, all that was important. But I feel like that question comes up a lot. And being that they took it off the milestone checklist, could you guys just speak to like why that's a huge important one?
I mean, so many things. I'm sure we could talk for a really long time about that. But crawling is such a base level skill that even if we do miss it, we need to go back to it just as that precursor. Like it's that important that even if kids do start walking and skip crawling, go back to it. Have them go through tunnels, have them go under couch cushions, have them do obstacle courses. It is so important for that core strength, bilateral coordination, visual development. There's so many aspects. Getting the vestibular and proprioceptive sits. Yeah, I losing track because my mind's going faster than my mouth. But there's so many layers to it, and I can usually tell if I do get an older kiddo, or even now that I'm around a lot of school age kids because of my own children, I can kind of pinpoint the ones that didn't crawl if I've seen them for long enough. And a lot of it has to do with hand strength too, and handwriting, as well as sports coordination and stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, the handwriting I know has come up a few times where I've had reading teachers say like, I can tell that child never crawled because I can tell by the way they're writing. Even with feeding, I mean, it's usually something that we can pick up on because are they using both hands to help feed themselves or to like open containers and to, stir and mix and prep food and things, or are they only relying on one? Can they cross midline and things like that? So, yeah, thank you for speaking to that one. I know that was more of a personal ask because I had a personal experience with it, but I just was so disappointed to see that because I feel like it was already something that's often missed. And especially with all the feeding things that I feel like were super vague. When you go to your feeding or your pediatrician, a lot of times they're telling us that, and not all of them, I don't want to generalize, but sometimes we hear that they're saying, well, just it's a phase, a picky eating is just a phase. But like if the CDC could have included more specific guidelines on this, maybe we could have avoided that conversation, which happens so often, and not see kids in feeding therapy at 5 and older, and maybe catch them a little bit younger. And like you said, avoid having to undo these habits and stuff, and empower parents to know how to set them up for success. So that's a whole other tangent, but I digress.
Yeah, Giselle, did you have anything to add about crawling?
So, yeah, I think that crawling is actually one of the most important milestones. And the reason that kids tend to skip it is because it's tough. Let's just be honest. It has to integrate all the reflexes. They have to be strong in their neck, in their back, in their shoulders, in their core, in their hips. And they have to coordinate both sides of the brain because they're using both sides of the body at the same time. They have to motor plan to be able to move opposite limbs at the same time. There's so much that goes on with crawling, which is why kids tend to skip it, which is also why we say it's such a foundational skill. I love what you said, Kelsey, and I say the same thing, that it's not too late. Like if kids don't crawl before they walk, they can still crawl after by setting up different things. And we use it a lot to like integrate reflexes and that kind of thing in therapy. But it's just, there's so many benefits to it. And I just wanted to just have parents understand that there's a valid reason why to skip it. But in that is why it's so valuable to work at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. I don't know if there's any other specific questions or comments that had come up, Giselle, but I know for me, I just wanted for anyone who is listening, what I'll do is when you share the video, I'd like to just I'll share with you like Asha's link for the milestones that people can refer to. Yeah. And then for feeding, I did a little search and it's very confusing for parents. Like Gerber's milestone list comes up and like Pampers, and you're like, what? Like, why are these showing lists? So I love feedingmatters.org. They're wonderful. website to look for. They have a questionnaire that you can fill out. They have all kinds of resources and facts, both for providers, like, you know, feeding therapists, speech and occupational therapists to use, but also for parents. So those are kind of my two go-to recommendations if you are looking for better resources for understanding your child's milestones, both for feeding and for communication. And I know, Kelsey, you work on feeding as well. So if you have anything to add on the feeding end, feel free to add that. But just wanted to make sure that that was said.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great resources. I really like to send parents, especially since we're on Instagram, Solid Starts is a wonderful Instagram account, and they have their own app. It's free. They have a great blog. It is a little overwhelming because there's so much information that they put out there, but it's really good. So that's usually my first step of like, if you have questions, go check that out. Happy to talk more about it. But I think in this day and age, when most people are getting a lot of information in this platform, it's kind of nice to just be like, oh, follow them, and you might see something and then remember it and go back to that account or something.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. Go ahead, Giselle.
Absolutely. No, and for me, I love recommending pathways.org. They have an Instagram account as well, but their website as well is pretty good. I think that they offer a wide range. And so it'll at least allow you to see like what you're doing and what the ranges are. Again, I always feel like if you're approaching that higher end of the range, it's always better to check in with somebody that knows, that can provide you like some quick tips and tricks. And I think that early intervention in most states also, like they will come out and do an evaluation at no charge and then place you, and you can qualify based on, you know, how you score in the standardized testing. And
to that point, they're free, and a parent can request it. It doesn't have to come from your pediatrician, which just so everybody knows that is sometimes things that I hear parents say, oh, my pediatrician is the one who has to refer me for that, right? But that is not the case. You can self-refer, you can call, you can just look online and look for your early intervention, usually on the county website, and you can request that on your own as a parent.
And I think trusting your gut, like Giselle was saying, it's so important. And if it's a nagging thing in your mind that keeps coming up, like, I still don't see them doing that, or like, I just don't know, I would highly recommend, you know, either seeking help from somebody like us online, or, you know, calling early intervention, getting an evaluation on the books, because usually there's a wait list and it takes a little while to get rolling. So if that nagging voice keeps coming back at you, like, I don't know, the evaluation's free. Some states do have a sliding scale, but it's very affordable. And the evaluation is usually free. It doesn't matter, but it will give you good information, even if they don't qualify. You'll get a whole list of things to work on and what you should be including in their environment and their routine and all the things. So I think it's a great resource, even if you just do it for the evaluation.
100%. Yeah.
I'm seeing that they froze a little bit. I don't want to interrupt.
Oh. There we go.
Are you back?
We're all back.
You're good. Yes. So I don't have anything else, but I don't know if you guys have anything else to mention, but I'm so grateful that both of you guys were willing to do this, because you guys are such, you know, leaders in the field and trying to spread the word and empower parents, you know, across, you know, what you're doing in therapy, but also on social media, which so many people turn to these days. So I'm just really grateful that you guys are willing to do this. So thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Before we sign off, I just want to encourage, if anyone that is watching has any questions, definitely ask. We'll take a couple of specific questions. Let me go through quickly. Danielle Atanasio says, will this live be posted and saved for us to refer to later? Absolutely. I'm going to save it and I'll share it with you ladies so you could share it, and it will live on my Instagram account. I'll make sure that it's clear what it is and, you know, which one it is. Ken says, it's hard to be in the 10-month stage and wanting to make improvements. It feels impossible. Yes, my heart goes out to you. Like I said, at 10 months, they have opinions and they're strong. But have no fear. You know, us therapists are trained what to do to make it fun. So if you feel like it's all too overwhelming for you, just reach out to a therapist. I think that having the evaluation, we can pretty quickly identify where that missing link is and start working on it. And you'll be surprised at how quickly the changes can occur. So we're here with you. Let's Gab speech. Hi. So many people on here, which is so cool. Small interventions early have big long-term effects. Absolutely. The Mobility Project said there's already so many kids who don't get school services. It's true. School services are like a whole other thing because just to qualify for them, you have to be so behind. So the early intervention is why we always advocate for it, because all these skills are like building blocks. It's foundation that we set early on. Those first 3 years are like the most pivotal time to make those changes. So yes, it's always better to get them before school services start. The Mom Loft wrote, as a nursery teacher, it starts during the infant and toddler years. We need more education on milestones and how to facilitate that development. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's one of the things I do in my community is like go to the preschools and teach the teachers how to play with the kids, how to nurture that development early on in those infant and toddler years. So thank you for that comment. Carmen Baker wrote, baby's brain connectivity builds rapidly from birth. It seems that these new guidelines are setting us up for compromised development.
That's the big question mark.
It's really hard, yeah, because with the 50% versus 75%, it's like, okay, if you're not doing it by this age, it's definitely, you should, you know, seek some help, seek some assistance in whatever that is. But I also feel like it's just pushed back farther. Yeah. And it's kind of like the end of the line of where you can't ignore it anymore versus having a more proactive approach versus reactive.
That's right. And interestingly, the CDC acknowledged that the checklist is not a substitute for specialized evaluation in an area of concern. So if you do have an area of concern, you know, they even say, trust yourself. Don't trust us.
Yeah, they have that all over. Like, all over this whole initiative, they really are pushing for early identification. It just seems like they missed the mark on what they listed to help guide that process. So they're, like I said, their intentions are well-meaning, but a lot of the vagueness is leading to confusion.
Yeah, exactly. Monique Monica, she wrote, OMG, Lauren and Dr. Gigi doing a live together. My world's alive. Surprise, we know each other.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Mon.
That's adorable. Pathways over CDC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Carmen wrote, do you think that repeated complaints might get these new guidelines reversed? What a great question. In fact, the APTA, which is the American Physical Therapy Association, they were having a meeting with the CDC this week, and they were encouraging us, all the pediatric therapists, to come on and voice our opinions. So I don't actually know if things will change, but hopefully at least they're feeling the heat that, like, we're the developmental specialists. Like, you know, how easy was it for you to like send me a quick message and say, hey, you want to meet up? And we're like, yeah, sure.
Yes, we want to help. We want to have good information out there.
Yeah, therapists are like, education is what we do. I mean, we're so good at helping parents like understand things and break things down simply. So let's hope that they're willing to hear us out, because for sure the therapists want to help.
Yeah, AOTA is doing something similar. There's a big push that it is a very small part of the toolbox, right? It doesn't affect the developmental assessments that we use to, you know, get kids qualified for certain things. It hasn't gone that far yet. So hopefully this doesn't snowball into something bigger and we can rein it back in.
Yeah, and ASHA is doing the same thing. They're reviewing all the literature and the research before they
reach out.
Thing.
I lost you there for a second, Lauren.
Okay, ASHA is doing the same thing, but you can move on to the next one. Go ahead. Oh, geez.
So Monica said, what happens if EI says your child is on the border but doesn't qualify? How do you best advocate? Great question. I think we alluded to it earlier, but what I was going to say was, you can self-refer anywhere you want. In fact, when Lauren and I were working at the medical center together, I was also doing early intervention, and I was getting that question a lot where parents were not qualifying specifically for therapy through early intervention, but you could still go and get therapy privately. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people, those benefits that are covered, and you can find someone that takes your insurance and you can go through privately. So it doesn't have to be, EI is like a state funded program versus private therapy would be through your health insurance.
I also want to point out, I hope my feed okay? You can hear me?
Yeah.
There's something called a professional judgment that in an evaluation, if a parent is really explaining to the therapist how it's functionally impacting their child, if they're not showing the eligibility criteria of the 25% or the 33% delay in 2 areas or more, they can sometimes justify it with what's called a professional judgment. So I would use those words and say to your team, is there any way that this can be justified with professional judgment, because it's really functionally impacting our routines in this way, and kind of approach it from that perspective.
Yeah, early intervention. I did 10 years in early intervention. Very familiar with it in Philadelphia, and it's called informed clinical opinion here. Same thing, professional judgment. It differs state to state, but if you say one of those things, it can be helpful. Yeah. And I would also, don't take it as a defeat, but just be like, okay, I need to go a different avenue, and maybe I do need to kind of get some private PT or OT or speech or whatever in place, and then try again in a few months to supplement. So it can be really frustrating when you go through and you're like, my kid definitely needs services, and it kind of depends on your eval team and all the things. It's based on standardized testing, but there is some variation. So yeah.
So the Mom Loft wrote, how can daycare/nursery teachers help better support little ones with reaching their milestones? That's a really good question. Like I said, I go and do education in the community to teach, daycare and nursery teachers how to get babies out of containers, how to leave them on the floor. That's another thing we should talk about. How naturally, allow babies to reach these milestones, because milestones, I always say this, it's not like potty training where like you have to take it on and like teach it as a parent to the kids or they're not going to get them. No, milestones are they're supposed to be a natural progression of how the baby develops over time. So I always say just allowing them to be on the floor and giving them toys that are appropriate for their age group will sort of facilitate that natural development. But, if you're interested in that, ask the management at the daycare, tell them you want to learn, reach out to me, reach out to any of these lovely ladies. There's, like I said, we're always so willing to educate and help in this realm.
Yes, 1,000%. Anytime I had a case at a daycare through early intervention, I would kind of have all of the teachers around and trying to get everybody on board, because if I just come in and do my hour, it doesn't make any change, right? I mean, it might make a tiny change, but I want the environment to be supportive of the goal that we're working towards. And that includes the caregivers and the actual physical environment, toys and whatnot. So,
yeah. Cool. Luna's dog mom said, did they update these new milestones in the CDC milestones tracking app? I'm not sure.
Okay, so I can speak to that because I did download the tracking app just to play around with it and be knowledgeable of it. It does seem like it's a little bit more specific than the checklist. So I went through and filled it out for my 2-year-old, and they do ask more questions and give more markers for red flags than they do in the list, but I still think there were things missing, but it's still a step closer to like being more useful, if that helps. I don't know if this app was from before or is like also updated, but if I'm comparing it to what their current updated list is and what I saw yesterday, it looks like it's more detailed than the developmental list that they recently released.
Cool. Luna's dog mom wrote, I'm an audiologist and worried about how the changes in speech milestones will further delay pediatrician referral for speech evals, which includes a hearing test. Catching hearing loss soon is critical.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mom's got to trust their gut.
Yeah. And I think now that we're kind of coming out of more stringent lockdown COVID protocols and whatnot, people, and the weather's getting nicer, more people are outside, you're seeing other babies around the same age, toddlers around the same age. And not that you ever want to compare your child, like that's never the goal. But if you're seeing a bunch of other toddlers or babies or whoever kind of demonstrating something, you're like, why is not doing that? So it's just something to get curious about. It's not something to feel bad about or have judgment around. It's just more information, because it's nice to be getting a sense of community. We had this, virtual community, and we still do, and it's wonderful, and we're all here to support each other. But I think it's really important to get out and, go to the play groups when they're back open, and go to the play spaces and have that interaction.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Awesome. Any final thoughts before we wrap up, ladies?
Just, I think the message is clear, both with following your gut and being proactive versus reactive. I think those are the takeaways. And go to the sources that are specific to your concern, right? Like the CDC is general, and a lot of people are like, why are they even putting milestones out? But think of that yourself. Maybe check on, but also go to something more specific to physical milestones from I don't remember what your agency is, but look to those sources and pathways, and ask questions to an actual therapist. That's great about social media. You can access us more easily and say, hey, is this a red flag? And they can say, let me send you something that will help you figure that out if they can't actually answer, so just go that extra step and ask the question to someone who's more specifically trained, so you feel better informed.
Excellent.
1000%. Yeah.
Very good. And just again, we are, we put ourselves out there on social media, and we love to educate parents and other caregivers and, whoever else, healthcare professionals. So we are always willing to help. For me, I check my own DMs, so always feel free to, hit me up. And I can't promise I get back to you immediately, but I do get back to you. And we are here to do this together. Our goal, my goal is always keep kids out of therapy. So I love giving you different ideas and advice to keep kids out of therapy. But if we feel like they need a little bit of extra support, then we can help you figure that out as well.
Yeah. Yep. Great. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome.
Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad we finally got to meet, Kelsey.
I know,
Yes.
me too.
Yes.
See you soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.